Hi everyone, thought I'd come on and do a Dolly episode today, if you don't mind. So here we go. Right, Dolly and her man were married on April the 10th. They moved into the cottage and all was going famously, and within the month, by the 1st of May, Dolly was pregnant with their first child. Both of them were absolutely thrilled. It was just euphoric to think that they were going to bring a new life into the world, and they made plans. They made plans of what they wanted to do with their baby and how they're going to make the spare room into its special room. The pregnancy went really well, surprisingly well. She had no sickness, she had no aches and pains, and she continued to work right the way up. Obviously there was no maternity leave in them days, but everybody within the house helped her where they could. She didn't carry anything too heavy, she was helped up the stairs, everybody was absolutely wonderful. On the 20th of January, Dolly got up feeling uncomfortable. She rubbed her back, she'd got an ache, and she didn't quite know why, because she'd felt fine the day before. She went to work, and a couple of the other women said, "You're sure you're going to drop this baby today, girl?" "No," said Dolly, "no, I'm not." "Yes, it is. It's your due date, you donut," said one of them. Anyway, Dolly carefully walked home that night, feeling a little worse the first time she actually felt sick during the whole of the pregnancy, and she ached from head to toe. It had been a long day and her back hadn't stopped hurting. She went to bed that night feeling uncomfortable, and early hours of the 27th, they called the midwife. The midwife came out in a hustle and bustle, shutting hubby out, put on kettles, get some clean towels, more to keep him busy than what was needed. "And make me a cup of tea, and if you've got a drop of sherry, I'll have that and all," she said. She flurried upstairs to find Dolly laying on the bed, sweating and obviously in pain. The midwife said, "Let me check you, me girl." So she checked her belly. "Something's not quite right," she said. "I think we got one of them babies round the wrong way," she said. "It's a breech birth, and by the feels of your tongue, it's bum first." Dolly, for the first time, began to feel anxious. "Pipping, that's a good pregnancy," she said. "Oh, it can't be out, girl. Don't worry. I've delivered babies like this before. We'll have you sorted." Dolly's pain was unbearable. The baby shifted, but it didn't shift enough for it not to be bummed down. Everything was going wrong, or so Dolly felt. The midwife said to her, "Come on, girl, let's try and move him about." So manually they tried to turn the baby round, which was painful for her. Poor Dolly was screaming in pain. A hubby outside knocked on the door. "It's all right. Women business. Off you go," said the midwife. By the following day, the midwife decided if things continued the way they were, because the poor girl, well over 24 hours she would be if they left her, they decided to call Dr. Jones. "We need help." Off went hubby, out in a storm which had started that day. There was snow. It was horrendous, probably the last storm of the year or the winter. He got the doctor. By the time he come back, there was some screaming and some carryings on. Hubby washed his hands, sat back down with his head in his hands. He couldn't bear to hear his Dolly screaming. It was an horrendous, horrendous scream of pain and anxiety. The doctor went in, took his bag, took one look and said, "Well, it's no way about it, we're going to have to cut her." The nurse looked anxious, or the midwife, should I say, looked anxious, and Dolly had fear in her eyes, but she was hot, sweaty, she was feverish. She was so tired, her whole body ached. And with the contractions and the fact that she could not push this baby out, she was just exhausted, totally and utterly exhausted. The doctor, Dr. Jones, did what he had to do, and Mrs. Betty Taylor, the midwife, was there to help out as much as she could, calming the girl, wiping her head and helping to hold her legs out while the doctor did what he had to do. The cutting of her was excruciatingly painful, but because she was already in pain and so tired, she didn't really feel it perhaps as much as she should have done. The next thing we knew, there was a loud scream and the baby was born. The doctor bustled around and sent Betty to clean the baby up while he attended to the wife. Seemed to be far more blood than he would have expected, but he tried to stop the bleeding, but it wasn't to be, and the bleeding kept coming. After several hours, things started to calm down, and Betty said she'd best go and introduce this baby girl, who was 7.5 pounds, to her dad. She went to the door and opened the door, and she said to him, "I'm ever so sorry, my love. We could save one or the other." He stood up to attention and looked at her. "What? I'd like to introduce you to your new daughter. She's a beauty." "I'm sorry, boy, I'm so sorry," said midwife Betty. She handed the baby to its father, and he looked down and smiled. "She looks like my Dolly," he said. "Oh, I'm sorry," said the midwife. "I'm so sorry. Your first one and all, leaving you on your own like this to care for a baby." He looked at her angrily, as if it had been Dolly's fault. "So, my love, what are you going to call the baby? Do you have any ideas? I know it's a bad time." He smiled at the baby sweetly, and through his tears of pain he said, "Her name will be Dolly. And while she lives, her mum will live on too." So sadly, you see, our Dolly had come from being a young girl to a servant girl to a professional cook. She'd had high days and holidays and low days. She'd had friends and family, grief, happiness, a normal life, I guess. But at the age of 28, coming 29, she'd given birth to a beautiful baby girl. But sadly, she'd given her own life while doing so, as obviously in Victorian times things weren't quite as good as they are today. So I guess it's time that we say our goodbyes to Dolly and hope that little Dolly does well. She's got a good father, they've got good friends, they'll be fine. But anyway, bye Dolly. Thanks for the time together. May angels' wings fly you high.